To the cloud.
Hi everyone, I'm Rich, apparently the user group leader.
Apparently.
Anyway, today we have a fun and festive user group meeting. We are going to do all kinds of things. You can see some of them written right up here above me. And other things, though, we do have some news from Erin. Erin, are you on?
I saw you
ready
to go. There you are.
Oh.
I'm ready.
Oh, there you were. You're right in the middle. I just totally looked right around you. You got goats, though. I like it.
I'm ready.
She has slides.
And I know it's Rachel loves it when I share slides.
Oh, there's more than one. Wow.
Oh no, it's
Look
just
at
one.
this.
It's just one. No, just
Oh,
one.
okay. Good.
Yeah,
That's
just
fine.
get pumped. And you would think that at some point in my life I would understand how to use the presenter view here. But so yeah, so much like Cribl gives you, I should look over here, much like Cribl gives you choice and control over when and where and how and the things you do with your data, so too will we give you choice and control over your initial Criblcon beta experience. So instead of trying to do something where you come to yet another thing, now that everybody's excited to do all the things in person, since we can finally do things in person again, but we want to just capitalize on where we're hoping that you will already be. So we're going to have 3 different shindigs. So one will be at RSA, one will be at .conf, and one will be at Black Hat DEF CON, actually kind of sitting right between the two. So the one at RSA will be on Wednesday, June 8th. It's going to be at a little speakeasy style place that's about like 3 blocks. I think it's about 3 blocks from Moscone. It might only be 2 or it might be 4. But it's a pretty cool little place. So we'll do just like a quickie venue. And then the goal is mostly to have networking, digital whiteboards, and some demo stations. We've got a couple of topics. Rich, where are you going? He's slowly disappearing. Am I boring you? Okay, I'll speed it up. Anyway, be there or be square. It's going to be rad. Hit me up in Slack if you have other questions. But so anyway, we'll do it at RSA. We'll do more like just straight networking, no presentation at the .conf and the Black Hat ones, just because of the function of the space. We'll have mostly space to do networking, demo stations, some whiteboarding and stuff. What I might look for are people to sort of act as hosts or like birds of a feather leaders for a couple of different topics. So if you're up for that, ping me. And that's the scoop. We will send out, so this is kind of like your unofficial save the date. We're building a landing page now, and then you can register for one or all of these events if you're going to be at the other ones anyway. So that's,
and by networking, Erin means standing around with drinks, talking to each other.
Yes.
This is not a LinkedIn event, just to be clear.
Yeah.
Networking.
Yes. And so even though this one's at noon, there will be lunch and drinks. And these are all taking place in bars. So there will be drinks or also non-alcoholic drinks for those of us who do not always partake. So, choose your adventure, choose your Criblcon, choose your drink of choice, and hope to see you there.
Did you mention, you might have said this and I was totally spaced out while I was waiting for my table to arrive, but did you mention if there's pre-registration required for any of these or recommend?
So, I mean, we're going to ask people to register so we can have name tags and those kinds of things to facilitate said networking while drinking. Right. But it's not going to be required because I think like at all these, it's just going to be like, we just want people to come and talk about
Perfect.
Cribl and or D&D with your daughter and best practices for that. That is also an acceptable topic.
It's the dice. That's why we keep bringing up D&D, is because we always get out the dice for the swag rolls, and so that just brings up the topic. Anyway, sorry.
I like it. So that's it. If you have questions, just let me know. Whoop, you guys don't care about that one. So
was it secrets? We recorded it. I can buzz. I can.
Uh-oh. You might have to edit that one out. No,
I'm gonna say, you let me know if I need to edit that one out. I can make it better.
I think it's fine. We'll take a peek.
Yeah.
It's just quotes. It's stuff people actually said.
Great. Yeah. It may not be a big deal. So either way, just let me know.
Mm-hmm.
All right. All right.
xpac wants to turbocharge his ingestion pipeline at one of these events.
Yes. I think that is the best claim that Cribl ever came up with. And that is the only one that really stuck to my mind.
So the question is, do we jump into xpac right now, or did we have a video to watch? Or are we going to do that afterwards?
Your choice. It's just it's a pretty silly little.
Oh, I'm sure it is. I'm sure it is. We saw the first part. I thought it was great, though. That's how about we take a vote? We're not going to use any fancy voting online. Raise your hand if you think, or say yay if you think we should watch the video first, then xpac. Oh boy, I'll tell you what, we're going to watch the video after.
I think if xpac's voting for the video, then I guess we got to watch the video. Okay.
We will wait.
All right.
on the
So
video.
more sharing of my screen, but first let me not go to that slide. Let me not show that.
The rest of your internal presentation.
The rest of my internal presentation. All right, here we go.
We're professionals here.
All right.
Oh. What were you saying about being a professional?
Don't forget to run the audio through.
This is the story of Dana the
You all hear
Decent,
it?
a humble systems administrator for midearth.io. Dana recently began using the free version of Stream from Cribl, stirring up visions of acquiring a wizard-like mastery of her observability data. But the smuggest enterprise architect in all of mid-Earth insists the company can build its own solution.
Best part of all, I get to take all the credit.
If only Dana had an ally.
Dana, as Vice President of Cyber Threats, my Security and Operations Center needs to better manage its data quality and route it to the right security tool.
If we harness the power of Cribl Stream, we can solve a range of security observability problems across the enterprise.
You can't use it because I haven't approved it.
The cloud engineering team disagrees. We could use Cribl Stream to send operational logs to our troubleshooting tool without interrupting the security logging we already sent to the cyber threat team.
Don't forget about those of us in the infrastructure department. We need Cribl Stream to extract valuable metrics from our logs.
But handling such data required power. And Dana needed the magic of Stream Enterprise to reach maximum scalability.
Oh, my credit. My precious, precious, precious.
Thus begins an age of prosperity for Mid-Earth.io. Cribl Stream, one observability data tool to rule them all.
Hey, where'd you get that pipe?
Oh, I found it in the parking lot. It was in the dumpster.
Ew.
So that's the ending you voted on, everybody.
Oh.
Apparently the actors like just found these things and decided to like impromptu, and they're like, hey, can you guys do anything with that? I'm like, well, the one was a pipe and the other one was an axe. I'm like, I feel like we can align that to Hobbits and Dwarves, and there you have it.
That was weird.
Thank you. Yeah. All right, and back to regularly scheduled content.
Yes, back to the regularly scheduled content, which is now, I think it's time for the magical and wonderful xpac. It's just xpac to meander.
You're just
I'm
trying
not
to
even
raise.
sure about half of these words he's going to use. I don't know. It's
You're
fine
just
though. He's
trying to
going to tell
raise
us
the
all about
bar so they can fall deeper, right?
it. Do you want? I will hand over. How do I do this? I will. Oh, I could spotlight. What does this do? Hang on.
Oh God, who did this?
I made you big.
Yeah, as if that was actually needed.
Perfect.
So
Now I got
yeah,
to figure out how to undo that.
Remove spotlight.
Unspotlight. There it is. I see the
Yeah.
button now.
yeah, I've been
And
trying to
now
figure
you're
out to
still
undo my
spotlight.
being big.
What I'm trying to do is now I need to actually pass you Well, I don't know. Can you just share? You should be able to just share and go, right?
Oh yeah, I can, but you have been talking all the time, so.
Just take it and run.
Steal it and go. I'm going to interrupt you in about a 25 minutes, half hour.
Yeah.
Cool.
So yeah, as Rich already has on his slide, I'm obviously going to be the diva for tonight. So like Cher and Madonna, thank you for that introduction. I'll just show a few things that I did in the last weeks, and if you have questions or if you just see something that I don't talk about but you see in the screen share, you just stop me and we can just go any direction, because I won't even pretend that I'm prepared, because I'm not. But I guess that's what meanderings means, right? So let me get that screen. So hopefully you should see something.
We
Does that
see
work?
something.
Yeah, we see something, Ray. So welcome to my tiny Cribl home lab, which consists of 1 leader and 1 worker. So everything is super simple. And I've just been doing things. And one of that was working with Redis, because I have, so when you do things in Splunk, I guess everybody who has spent some time with Splunk has come to the point where you want to like see when a certain thing changes. Like you're looking at events in a certain order, and then there comes the point where you're like, okay, we need to monitor the point when something changes. Like maybe a client goes to a different Wi-Fi access point. In my case, that was what I actually did, because I only built super high value business cases in my personal Splunk is. What I did is I monitored my internet connection, because when we moved to this house, the connection was terrible, as in we had DSL resyncs like 20 each day, which meant like 5 to 10 minute outtakes from the internet all the time. Since that time, I know the Wi-Fi password of my neighbors, and now have a second uplink to the internet. But yeah, so I started monitoring the data that I get from my DSL modem, and it was a pretty simple use case. So pretty much just look at the down and up speed that it reports, and if these numbers change, there has been a resync. That is pretty much it, because the modem itself doesn't say, hey, I've just resynced. It will just say, this is the speed, this is speed, this is speed. Then it doesn't report anything. And then it says, oh, this is the speed and it's different. What would you classically do in Splunk? You just pull all the events, and then you do something with stream stats usually, and compare, like, take the event from the event before that one and put it as an additional field, and you compare them, and yet at some point you have events where those two fields differ. But you have to take in mind this thing runs on a 1 core box with like almost no memory. So just pulling 7 days of this data makes this dashboard go very, very slow. So I thought like, okay, I want to do stream stats, but I want to do this in Cribl. And that was the point where I like, okay, I need to find a way to keep state, but over multiple events, or actually in my case, just 2, but I need to keep the state. How I'm going to do this, because pretty much everything you do in Cribl is based on the one event you're just working with. You can do statistics, okay, but it's not really what I was looking for. So what I did is set up Redis, which was actually a lot simpler than I expected, because Redis in its most simple form is actually super simple. And I have to figure out where this is. So there is the pack for my DSL modem, and there is a pipeline, and that pipeline does things. So what does this expect? For everybody who does home lab stuff or does Docker stuff, might have seen Portainer, which is Docker, but a little easier to manage. So I'll go to my Cribl stack. What I did is pretty much just add a Redis node down here that is in the same stack as my Cribl setup, and pretty much just tell it to so Redis is for those that don't know, because I didn't know 2 weeks ago, is an in-memory database which just keeps key value data, And if you tell it to save, it can actually save to this. So if the if that thing restarts, it's not just getting lost. So that is what I'm telling it here. And then in Cribl, that's actually, or in Stream, as we say it in these days, it's actually pretty simple. You tell it where your Redis is, which, well, this is Docker, so everything is simple. Redis is called Redis. You can hand it a secret to connect, and then you just go here and tell it to set a variable. In my case, the setup is super simple. There is no, I don't have multiple DSL modems. I don't need anything fancy. So I pretty much just, whenever an event passes through here, it takes the value of downspeed, which is here, and writes it to a Redis key that is called DSL old downspeed. And then in the same step, also gets the value. So before it writes it, it also gets the value. So you get what is saved in Redis as a value in your event.
Example. This example is going to cover a log that I was actually asked to get a value.
Thank you. So what you're doing is you're taking the value from the event that passed through before this one, and you stored your current value and in the same point, and do that for the two values. And now I have them both in my event. I can see the speed that I currently have, but I can also see the speed that the last event that passed through had. And well, from that point, it's pretty simple. You just look at events where the speed is different, and then you set resync to 0 or resync to 1. And then you have events that still have the speed. You can still draw graphs like this, which now that they repaired my line, it's pretty boring because nothing changes. But the resync thing here now goes a lot faster, and I also used it as annotations. And yeah, you can do all of these now. Yeah, so that is pretty much it. Like, setting up the basic Redis was actually pretty simple. I had to toy around a little bit with it because I've never used it before, but you can pretty much just spin up a Redis container and then store data in it, get data from it, and it actually has a long list of commands that it supports. And you can do things like set values, but they expire after a certain time, set values and get them in the same step, and so on. There's a lot that you can do with Redis, and that yeah, allows you to store data. And I think that is especially important if you have either situations like mine, or if you have more than one Cribl worker, because some people here might run then more than one Cribl worker, and then it's hard to share any kind of state. And Redis allows you to do that pretty easily. And I know one of the most common requests is, can we please support Redis cluster? And I think there is one of these Cribl numbers that I frequently get for that support. I have no idea if anybody in this call knows when this will happen. That would be the requirement for a distributed Redis setup, but at this point, this works pretty well for me. So
this solves so many problems. Or actually, it solves one problem that appears everywhere.
Yeah.
So often do you need to maintain state. Now, this just overwrites the old variable each time, right? So it's not really like piling up a humongous amount of time series data on state.
This is literally just one variable, or actually, well, it is two.
Yeah.
And you save a value, and by appending a second argument saying get, it will return the value that was in there before to you.
Oh.
So
I see. Even better. Cool.
Get and set in one command.
Huh.
So there is something in Redis. Well, if you look for Redis, there is this thing. Well, that it worked. So at Redis.io, there is a long list of all the commands that they support. So you can do a lot of things with this. You can do pop and push stacks and all this stuff. But for the most simple parts, it's pretty much just get and set. And yeah, you can tell it to get something. You can tell it to set an expiry date or whatever, and that works pretty well. You have full freedom to come up with the structure how you name your keys, you also need to come up with the structure how you name your keys if your setup's more complex than mine. But that works pretty well. So yeah, that is pretty much my stream stats built in Cribl solution that keeps me from searching a lot of data every time, because at index time I already know everything I need to know and I can pretty much just make that decision. And yeah, so what was a search like a few thousand event search, which is not that fast on my box, is now a metric search that searches for things one and counts it, and that's pretty much it. So it's pretty much instant. And I guess that is so okay, let me stop here. Any questions on this? Any remarks? Any swear words? I like to learn too.
There is some chat.
There is some chat. I did not see any of that. Oh, hooray.
There aren't a ton of questions, just comments. Pretty much.
No questions here. This is awesome. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah, that worked surprisingly well. Like, it's pretty much just spin up the container, set it up, and it took like half an hour. Like, okay, in a production environment, it might take a little longer, but this is my production environment, so hello. So that is it.
That is it. You have not rambled long enough yet.
No, that is it for Redis. So that is
okay.
my
It's only one topic.
tiny Redis use case. I'm because I don't have an agenda. I'm trying to look at these tiny things behind your head to see what I'm talking about next.
He'll keep talking. Node-RED, home automation, and stream.
So I guess one of the things that I really started to do a lot since I started using Stream for all the logs that I have here is converting things to metrics, which is super helpful if you want performant dashboards, especially with a one-core Splunk. So you obviously need to have data that works with metrics. So that means your value has to be a number, because else it doesn't really make sense. But if you already know that on your data, you're only going to run things like stats count, like statistic evaluations of any kind, make these metrics. They work so much faster in Splunk. And with Cribl, it's pretty simple. I did the same with, let me take a look. So there is Tasmota, which is an open source operating systems for Wi-Fi enabled, how do you say, power plugs or wall switches, or, well, a ton of equipment that you can buy off of shady AliExpress vendors, and that will make your home more or less smart. So Tasmota gives you the opportunity to have an open source system that, pretty much gives you tons of flexibility. And yeah, well, these log too, surprisingly. In my case, I have a bunch of power plugs that that log the power consumption of the attached device or whatever is attached to it. So I have a few of those scattered around my house. And now I'm creating metrics for certain things. So in this case, what did I do? I have a few fields here that are that is extracted to JSON. Let me see if I have the corresponding sample here. I think that is it. So what are you doing when you want to work with metrics? I'm just going to pretend that nobody of you has done this before. If you have, you won't learn a lot new, but I'll just give you a quick overview because I think it is super useful in Splunk. First, you do your regular field extraction, whatever that is. Like in this case, there is JSON, but as any good JSON in logging, it is hidden in something that is not JSON. So you have to cut it into pieces to make it actually work. So cut off the raw, then you can actually, or extract the part after sensor equals. Then you have JSON, you can just let Cribl parse that pretty easily. And then you have all the values that you might need. In this case, there are a few values here. And then you use the publish metrics function, which is actually pretty easy. You define the field that you want to take your data from. In this case, it's double underscore. For those that don't know, these are internal fields. You can I use them all the time to extract stuff that I know that I don't want to send to Splunk. So these are pretty much my helper variables or values. And then there's power, there's voltage, there's current, there's the power consumption or the energy consumption for today and yesterday. And I'm just telling it what the name should be later. There's a metric type. I'm not sure if that has any influence in Splunk. I think it is only relevant for other destinations, but yeah, I don't know that. If anybody knows that, I would like to know if these matter if you send to Splunk. I don't think so. And then you tell it to add your dimensions. So exclude the things that you don't need and add a star, or explicitly name your dimensions. A metric is pretty much a long list of a combination of a timestamp and a single value. In this case, for example, what is the actual power consumption now at this point in time? And the dimensions will create one of these series for every possible combination here of the values that you see. So what you usually use is the host name, because or the host field and the index and source type. You don't need to include these. The Splunk will automatically use them. But if you have anything else that you want to split this time series by, you add them as dimensions. And then Cribl converts them to metrics and sends them to Splunk. And that means that when you do dashboards in Splunk, they are a ton faster as if you just do regular events, because metrics work pretty well, even on a tiny box like mine. So you can actually maybe see when this thing loads that there is a lot of data in this, because JavaScript takes some time to render it and it's lagging behind the cursor if I move it, because that is pretty much the power consumption for the last 24 hours for all the power plugs that I have in my house. And there's also an aggregated value for these, and these are all metrics. So this dashboard used to load like a minute on my slow box, and it now is pretty much just, it's there. Like it takes 2 seconds or so.
It takes longer for the JavaScript to render it than it does to grab the data.
It actually does. So like the ton of data that falls out of this search takes some time to render in the browser, but the actual search is pretty fast. And you can still, with some hacking around and with the metrics preview command, can still use metrics as can actually extract the single values. You shouldn't do this as far as I understood, but it works. So hey, who cares? So that gives me a graph of how much power was consumed by which device. And you see the line below here, that is the single solar cell that I have recently installed in my garden. So this is clearly, how do you say? This is clearly a call to use metrics in Splunk whenever you can, because they make everything so much faster, and building them in Cribl is actually super easy. There's one thing that I can do so far, and I have, as is my character, complained about this a lot in Slack. So what you can't do currently is do any kind of wildcard or wildcarding. So if you have an object here and it sometimes contains 3 values and it sometimes contains 7 values, and they change their names because, well, that's what they do. You can't just say, pretty much just test motor energy and then star. That does not work yet. I would be happy if it would. And that has been added as an enhancement request. That is pretty much the one thing that I'm waiting for to make even more of my data go into metrics. So currently you have to actually determine each of the values that you want to add as a metric.
How do you, is there any way to handle, I mean, I know you could do it with an eval or other things outside of this particular function, but there's nothing in here that just handles the, hey, do all these things, but if any of them happen to be null this time, just throw them away. Or do you just have to do that after the fact?
Can you say it again?
If suppose you have, 8 fields in here that you're listing down, and because you've got 8 possible fields, but only 4 of them show up at any particular time, there's no way in here to just say only build the field if it actually exists and is not null, or do you have to just clean those out elsewhere?
I think at this point, if you tell them to use these fields and they don't exist, they won't get sent to Splunk.
Okay. Oh,
So
that's
pretty
convenient
easy.
then.
But I'm also sending data from Home Assistant here, and Home Assistant pretty much has a million of different names for its attributes and values and what you all call them. And building a list for that would take a long time, and I'm just too lazy for that.
So I have a thought on that, which is I actually built a different function to take disparate values that I got out of Habitat. Basically, some of them called it temperature, some of them called it temp, whatever it was. And first thing, before I would do something like this, I took those and jammed them into consistently named fields wherever I could. So instead of having 30 possible fields, I only had about 10 I had to deal with. And just basically rebuild the fields into proper field names. Then you could probably do something like this after the fact. That might help.
Yeah, I thought about this.
Yeah.
So the issue at this point is that when you have the Home Assistant events, there is like a ton of them, and has state, I think.
Your Cribl, by the way, is very much more better organized than my local little copy with 482 changes waiting and 14 test things.
I have at some point actually done what I do with, I'm a burnt child when it comes to this from Splunk. So everything is an app and everything is a separate app. And in this case, everything is a separate Cribl pack up to the point where there is a single pipeline with 2 functions, and this is totally overkill. But well, that's what it is. Get used to it. So what I've tried here is that I have these attribute things, and they sometimes, like you can see, they are sometimes there's 3, there's 4, they have different names. It depends a lot of what you actually send through it, and they differ. And some of them are, the other thing is, some of them are numbers and some of them are not.
Right.
And if you just like, you always have to give publish metrics a fixed list of field names. Like this one doesn't take a wildcard, an expression, anything. It just has to be named. So the field name has to be the same every time. You can give it an expression to kind of figure out what you want the metrics name in Splunk to be, but the field name that is in your event, that is not dynamic today. So the moment that it is, that I can just do state dot star or whatever it is.
Right, and then have the metric name just be the equivalent, almost like what
I actually did and what worked pretty well, especially assuming that I'm a total noob when it comes to JavaScript scripting, programming, I'm not sure what they call it, is using the code function and picking this attribute thingy into pieces and figure out if it's a number. So is this a number, then put it into the attributes num thing and remove it from attributes and do some other things. And whoop, I think that is invisible. Is this invisible? Let me see. No, that is a terrible example. There are no numbers in these examples. Well, but the code thing actually works pretty well. So you just have to get around, using JavaScript, and can then just do things that might be difficult with the functions that exist in Cribl, because your use case is special. Because in my case, I want to move all the fields that are where the value is a number, move them to a different object and remove them from this object. But if they are this, or if they match, or if they are undefined or match this regex, then move them to something else. Well, it's just a few lines of code, and that works surprisingly well, or unsurprisingly well, actually. But I couldn't find a way to work around this requirement of this has to be a named field. So that is the only thing where it's lacking today. But I think that is going to be integrated sooner or later. I guess what I actually want to say is when I work with Splunk alone, it was pretty much just get the data in so that it works. And now that I'm working with Cribl, it's a lot more of, oh, this log format isn't perfect, so we are just going to completely rewrite it and re-engineer it. Like changing logs is now totally common behavior when onboarding logs, while with Splunk, it was mostly like, just get this in without breaking it.
Yep, because in Splunk, this is hard. I mean, it's a hard problem. And in Cribl, it's like, yeah, that's fine. I can do it iteratively. I can work on a bit at a time. I can see the results. I can then, you know, go to the next step and then backtrack and I got to fix this some more. Yeah.
Like the publish metrics thing, the first time I used it, it was like half an hour and it worked. And I remember the first time when they shipped log to metrics for Splunk, like, I don't know how often I read the docs about this and I just like, my brain can't parse this. Like what, how does it work? I made it work in the end, but it's so complex that I would never sit at a customer and say, oh, let me just click here and there and then we make this metrics and it works better, because I know it's going to be complicated and you have to do a lot of stuff and restart Splunk and change config files and restart again. And here's just like click, click, click and it's done. So you just do it because it's easy.
Right.
I was dangerously close to 3 clicks and a beer. I'm just saying.
Ooh, zing.
Yes, it pretty much is.
That should be a marketing slogan. Click, 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 and you're done. I like it.
I like the 3 clicks in a beer. That does, you know.
It actually is. Like people ask me like, why does this not work in your or why is this not in your data? And you're just like, okay, let me add this function. Let me just write this line, commit deploy, and it takes like literally 5 seconds until it's in Splunk. And I guess, I mean, you remember with props and transforms, it's usually a restart, if not a debug refresh at least, and it always takes longer. And then you need to wait until it's applied and sent in, and you see it. And here it's just like, it's just so much faster. And then you just do things that you wouldn't have done before.
Right.
So that is pretty much it. So what did I do else? There is Home Assistant. For those of you that don't know, that is an open source, I don't need any cloud bullshit, smart home tool that can do literally everything. Like I've never seen a tool that has so many actually working integrations with pretty much everything that exists. It's super impressive. And at this point, I've put a lot of things in, and then you're like, okay, I have all these things in Home Assistant, and it's great because it saves you all the headaches of how to interface with the different tools. Like, for example, this thing can actually, and I find this impressive, is like, you can just connect your car app with it, and you know where your car drives to, and you can see is there enough fuel and stuff. But it also tells you if your washing machine is running or whatever. Like there's so many different things that you can combine in this one tool. And I was like, okay, obviously I need to get this data into Splunk because Home Assistant can do a lot of things, but the analysis in Home Assistant is usually difficult. Like when you are used to Splunk, like this is a chart. If I want to look at a different time range, I have to edit the dashboard, save it, it reloads, it takes forever. There's nothing of what you're used to from Splunk. So send all this data that is here to Splunk. There's multiple ways. There's a actually there is a Splunk integration that you can pretty much just enable by saying put in your config. We want to this talks Splunk hack at HTTP event collector. That's where my Cribl is. Please send me your data. That is
well, now we have your token.
Yeah, you do. Good luck sending to 192, 168, 23, 1. So that is pretty easy. But this only sends states from Home Assistant. So there's Node-RED, which is complete automation solution for different or a complete workflow automation. I don't know what to exactly call it inside Home Assistant that you can also use completely without Home Assistant. I think a few of the Splunk Trust people have used it before to get smart home things to talk to Splunk.
Yep.
Actually, pretty much my only setup here is take all events that Home Assistant sends me and sends them to Splunk, because that sends a lot more data, but it's also a lot more verbose. So if you look at the data that I get, let me show you. So there is, yeah, so these are the things as they look like. Have I said that I really, really would wish that Splunk has a expand all of these plus thingies? Because you have to click them all and it takes forever. So this is a single event, like one of your power plugs says like, oh, you're now using 8 watts and not 7 watts. And that is a ton of data for such a ridiculous change, because, well, it just gives you everything. And earlier that would have been terrible because, well, yeah, what to do about it? The Splunk solution would have been to, well, we can do regex on it, but no, not really. Yeah, what did I do in Cribl? I'm just reworking these events. Well, these I haven't reworked, obviously, but you can just rework the events and throw out half of the JSON and reserialize it, make it KB, whatever you want to. And I've been pretty extensively using this. Yeah, because it just saves like 80% of the data. In my case, most important storage, because my license isn't so easily yeah, hit. But that is something that you can use either if you have any kind of existing home automation system. If there is anything that you would like to connect, send it to Cribl, pick these events apart and throw away what you don't need. And that is exactly back to the point what I said before. Like, look at the logs that you get, figure out what you actually need, throw the rest away, and that makes a huge difference. So,
all right.
Any questions at this point?
Have you used Hoops?
Sorry?
Hoops, HOOBS.
No, I don't think
because
so.
When I was trying to with my automation, I was looking at Home Assist and Hoops, and Hoops seems to be easier, but now I'm looking at yours, like I'm missing a lot. I'm missing quite a bit.
What are you missing? I'll let the cat.
The integration. Home Assist has a lot more integration than Hoops. So, and the UI and everything else is totally different. So,
there have been a lot of changes to Home Assistant in the last 2 or 3 years.
Yeah,
now, if you looked at it 3 years ago, it was
junk.
Only a little bit like this. It really made big changes the last 2 years, I think, mostly. So, because that's why I ended up with the Habitat elevations, and because I was just at the cusp of some of this stuff happening, and I'm like, it just doesn't work for me. I can't make it work. Yeah. And so at some point I'm going to switch over to Home Assistant because I just like it better. And then I'll sell you my old Habitat elevations.
No, I'm getting frustrated with mine because this, I mean, eventually you figure it out, but it takes forever. It's just not worth it.
With Home Assistant, a lot of things are actually super easy. Like, I think this is the only piece of software that I've seen that integrates codes from, like, I feel like dozens and hundreds of developers, and it still runs stable after installing like 20 different things. There is Home Assistant IO, which is pretty much a complete operating system that runs all its single parts in Docker. So Home Assistant itself is running in a Docker container. There's a supervisor that is running in the Docker container. Every add-on that you install here is a Docker container. So the moment that you say, I don't need this anymore, it just throws away the container and, well, the config is gone. That makes it surprisingly resilient, because I've done, like, I think at least 10 to 15 updates on this thing, because they throw with updates like pretty much every week. And so far, nothing has broken. And you can see there is quite a few things in here that I have with the integrations. And that is the impressive stuff. Like, even if you don't have a smart home, there's usually stuff that you can integrate. You can use Spotify, you can use Google Cast, you can use Uptime Robot, which is a monitoring solution. You can add your Unify networking equipment. Like, all these things are not really smart home, but they all work with it.
Let me ask you this. Yeah. I mean, thinking of this as a big company, IoT data, how much data or log reduction were you able to do with the log stream? because the
For
example you
Hobbits,
showed earlier has a lot of junk and you just want it one line, you know?
Yeah, I
I
think
can
with
say
Hobbits
that
systems,
I have similar data I'm doing, and my reductions are about between 90 and 95%. I'm going to
I
get rid of
agree, yeah.
so much of this cruft in there and just cut it down to field value pairs and the ones that are not null and the ones that I care about, and whole sections just get thrown away.
You
Yeah.
haven't lost fidelity, but you got what you wanted.
Yeah, which makes my Splunk run better because I've got a little tiny box that does everything, and I'd rather
cheaper.
let Cribl handle that on the input than Splunk have to deal with it on the reading side again, you know, searching side.
Yeah.
To ignore all the data I don't care about.
So most of the logs that I get from Home Assistant are just converted to metrics, which in Splunk terms is tiny, tiny, tiny. And then there is a few logs that they still go in classic format, but the reduction is, I don't know, 70, 80%, because most of the stuff I just throw away or make it to metrics. And the difference is huge.
Yeah. I'm thinking of like a large customer installation. Something like this is significant impact. In a home use, I mean, tiny, but when you have terabytes and terabytes of data,
yeah,
and you the storage.
You mean
and
hundreds of megabytes, right?
Yeah.
No, not anymore. Not anymore.
Yeah. So in my case, I actually have more data after Cribl than before Cribl, but that is mostly because it collects all the system events from the Docker host that it's running on and in pretty tiny resolution. That actually works pretty well too. So I just took what I think that was added in 3.4 or 3.3. I'm not sure. The system metrics thing, which has a container metrics part where you can just say like, okay, send me all these container metrics, and you can pretty easily send them again as metrics to Splunk. And yeah, that gives me this dashboard that pretty much shows all the containers and how their CPU usage, memory, network stuff. And again, this is the one core box that does dozens other things. This is, what is it, 4 hours of data at tiny resolution. Well, I think at this point it's a minute, but it's reduced. So that works super quick now that it's metrics. Like a lot of use cases wouldn't really be possible with my Splunk setup on this tiny box, because the hardware would just consistently die, or Splunk would just crash because, well, it was out of memory or something like that. Now that it's metrics, yeah, I can do things and actually load dashboards in like 2 or 3 or 5 seconds that I wouldn't have even built before. So yeah, absolutely.
All right. Well, unless there's more questions, I think we do need to move along because we're going to run out of time.
Yeah.
Not that I want to. I just want to stand here for another 20 minutes and like do more, but I think you've covered most of the topics, right?
That was some fine meandering.
It was. I knew this was going to go well. I just know xpac well enough.
True to the slide, he continued until you asked him to stop. So well done.
Exactly.
Truth in advertising.
Truth in advertising. Yeah, I like it. So my slides are not only good, but they're accurate.
Excellent.
I know, bonus. All right.
So is it time for
I think it is.
all right. I have a question for Aaron. Do you have any, and you may not know anything about this, but do we know when the swag store is going to open back up for external stuff?
I do not know.
Okay.
But in the interim,
I have to ask by hand. I have to ask manually to have stuff sent.
oh, okay, all right.
But yeah, I just want to know.
Oh, well, the employee store is open, and you can use that to send swag.
All right. All right. As long as there's a way for me to actually do this in a reasonable amount of time, because I've had to ask manually the last couple of times, and I don't know if that takes longer.
Yeah.
I want people to get swag. I want truth in advertising when we actually
say there will be swag.
Exactly. There will be
swag.
Okay. I've currently got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13,
Hang on, I got to turn off my
14.
background.
You need a D14.
A D14. I will do a 20 and we will ignore things above 14.
Okay.
1 second while I do the none. There we go.
Hey.
All right. Close that.
Choose
so I can
your
do-
weapon.
Choose my weapon. We have a 12.
That is Sean Cannon. Are you still there? Woo!
This is
All
rigged.
right.
This is rigged, Rich.
I am here. Yes.
You are there. Awesome.
I promise you it isn't. You saw me roll it.
So if you, let's do 2 swag packs today. I don't know what you're getting. You'll get something cool, a collection of cool things. But if you win, just DM me your mailing address and your shirt size, and I will make sure this happens. DM me on the community Slack. All right.
Who is number 3?
Who is number 3? Well, that's Paul Stout. Way to go. First time caller, first time short time
my butt.
fan. So message me with your mailing info and I will make sure you get swag. I'm making my notes here.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Welcome to the Cribl user community.
All right.
All right. So yeah, there will be shirts, hats, whatever we got, maybe socks. I'm not sure. I'm wearing goat socks right now.
Hopefully they're not used socks and they're like brand new.
I'm not sending you my
Good.
socks.
Excellent.
I'll send you new socks. No, I'm not even going there. Not even going there.
Alrighty then.
Okay. So
unless we have any other business to cover, I think this probably covers the end of the user group.
All right. We will meet again in a month.
Yep.
And maybe by then we will have our mysterious and awesome Q&A site up and running.
Ooh, fun.
And so we'll get to talk a little bit about that if you're interested. But it is called Cribl Curious.
Ooh, nice. I think that sounds like a plan. Hopefully you guys will have that up so we can talk about it.
Yeah. Pray to whatever gods you.
Yeah, you know how these things go.
Yeah, sure do.
Okay.
All right then. I guess we call her done. I'm going to stop the recording and see everybody next month. Thanks so much.
XPac.
Thank you, XPac.
Hope you get some rest.
Yeah, thank you.